Also, slightly unpopular opinion, but I liked the cheat sheet better than the rule book. Welcome to another episode of Show and Tell Book Nook. I'm Chantel.
And I'm Amber.
And today we are going to be talking about and giving you a guide to Sarah Adams' books. She has currently 10 published books. A lot of them are actually getting republished with like new covers. So if you've been following her on social media, she's been teasing and like talking about. And she has an 11th book announced. We're extremely excited for. But to start off, we're going to go back to 2019 with Takana Gentleman.
So I read Takana Gentleman last year, and it's her Regency romance with an interesting premise. The female main character is kind of a con artist.
Not kind of, she is.
She is. And I instinctively want to say it's a fun, clean, non-spicy closed door Regency romance, but it's not her best work.
Really? Okay. Of her entire backlist, Takana Gentleman is my absolute favorite. I like Regency romances, so it's also part of it. But I thought it was extremely clever and ingenious. Like, she knocks on this guy's door and is like, "You made me pregnant." And you kind of get both perspectives, which is kind of fun. And he's just like, "No, I didn't." She's like, "Yes, you did. How dare you lie to my face?" And he's like, in his head, he's like, "I have never done anything. Like, this is not my child." But he's like, all right. And so in a way kidnaps her and takes her to his family's mansion. And he hasn't been back there in years. And then they pretend that they're engaged now because she's stranded there. And he's like, well, you say you have my baby, so we're just going to like get married. And she's like, how do I get out of this? I thought you were just going to pay me off. Anyway, then they fall in love and like it's them trying to figure out their differences. And it was ingenious. And so because of that, I actually genuinely like it. Next, we have To Catch a Suitor, which is the second book in that Regency romance series. It was published in 2020.
I actually didn't read it because there wasn't enough to get me to pick up the next book in the series. And after talking to you about it, I was like, well, I'm just going to forget it exists.
I would not recommend number 2. And I think that's also part of why you didn't read it. As I texted you and was like, this was fine. So this one deals, I'm pretty sure, with the younger sister of the main character Guy in the first novel. And she is madly in love with his best friend, but needs him to not view her as a child anymore. So she undergoes a bunch of different machinations to also convince him that he is also in love with her. It was fine, but I have read Regency romances like this before, and so didn't have the ingenuity of the first book. So that's To Catch a Suitor.
Next, we're going to go to the It Happened in Charleston series. These were both released in 2020. And the first one is The Match.
So this one, the main character is a single dad and his child has epilepsy. And he is kind of looking around for a service dog that can then help his child. Or his child wants one, but he's kind of on the fence about it. The main female heroine, she owns a dog service, like a dog training service. And so she has a dog that kind of matches with the daughter, and so that's why it's called The Match. And then she helps and goes to their house frequently to help train them both on the service dog and how to handle the epilepsy episodes with the dog, and they end up falling in love. And except it's also a slight like enemies to lovers, they don't get along right from the get-go. This is from her perspective. This is just like what the snippet on the back says. It is possible to go from fantasizing about kissing someone to wishing they would be run over by a truck in a matter of 2 minutes. That tells you all about like her personality, the kind of younger writing style that Sarah Adams has always had. But that is the first book in the It Happened in Charleston series.
I was just reading the Enemy synopsis, and it reads very young. Like, this straddles that line of young adult, new adult, where young adult novels but written for adults.
It is a very juvenile adult book.
So this one is Enemy Should Never Get a Second Chance, but this one might. It's been 12 years since I've seen him, 12 years since he won our war of wits by outsmarting me with a tactic I didn't even know was allowed. And I honestly can't even read past that because I'm like, no. Cringe.
There's a reason a lot of people have given it 2 stars, 1 star.
I feel like the same falls into the off-limits rule and the temporary roomie.
The off-limits rule is where she somehow, like, this girl gets kicked out of her apartment or something. She just almost moves in with her brother. I don't know. But she moves back in town where her brother is, and she starts to fall in love with her brother's roommate. So that's the off limits rule, because the entire premise is like, you can't fall in love with my best friend from the brother's perspective. But temporary roomie is the best friend of the girl from the first book. She moves in with, I'm pretty sure it's the brother.
They start living together. Now the brother needs a roommate. The best friend
Is pregnant and has
and
been kicked out of her apartment.
temporary roommates. I think there was like flooding at her apartment or something.
Yes. She can't live there because, again, she's pregnant, and he's also an OBGYN. She goes into labor and he's like, well, I'll be your baby's daddy too. And I'm just like, okay, let's get to the part where she finally became famous on Book Talk and her writing style evolved a little bit more. So we've got the cheat sheet 2021. I also read this right when it got on Kindle Unlimited. And so this was before Book Talk picked it up. I remember when Book Talk picked it up, Amber and I chatted, because I'm like, how does Book Talk, with all of its smut-loving romance books that it recommends, end up picking the cheat sheet, which the characters might be 30, but they act as if they are in high school?
I think the cheat sheet is where you start to see her wit come through. There were some really funny moments. My favorite, or two favorites of Sarah Adams, though, are When in Rome and Practice Makes Perfect. This series is following a set of siblings, which I'm really excited about, because When in Rome is the setup where you have a very popular singer who just needs to get away from her life, so she gets in her car and drives to the closest Rome she can, which happens to be in Rome, Kentucky, where her car then breaks down in front of Noah's yard, and he reluctantly helps her. I really loved all of the references to Audrey Hepburn, and I just love how this small town romance cast of characters came together, which makes Practice Makes Perfect just perfect.
They both just have a romance that's adorable. They have characters that actually grow and like do realistic things. They act according to their age a lot more than they do in other novels by Adams. And the setting is great. The like cast of characters throughout both novels is fantastic. She did also just announce Beg, Borrow, or Steal, which will come out in February of 2025. So that rounds out the One in Rome series. And then we've got the Rulebook, which was published beginning of April, and it's the second book in the cheat sheet series. I don't think she's going to do anything else with it. It also is because the rest of the characters in the cheat sheet / rule book are all married now. Cheat sheet was better than the rule book, in my opinion. Their relationship was cute. It's kind of like a second chance romance meets marriage of convenience.
I agree that the cheat sheet was better, but for me, I think it's because Derek didn't feel right on the page for me. She tried to write these characters with a significant backstory. The level of miscommunication that happened at that time that then kind of carried through the development of their second chance romance bugged me. And then Derek was this weird cinnamon roll character, golden retriever vibes, with a level of obsessive possessiveness that didn't vibe correctly.
It's also told in a dual point of view, which normally works, but I'm sorry, once you write she looks like a sexy piece of bubblegum, I was speechless reading that, because that was his brain.
So I think when they reconnected, they just kind of reverted back to where they were developmentally when they fell apart.
I think my other tricky thing is both characters made a lot of decisions that I didn't agree with how they handled it without doing the ending. For a lot of reasons I couldn't do. Derek decides to make a decision right at the very end. And if you are in a relationship with someone and you make a similar decision that is going to impact both of your lives drastically, not to mention professionally, because she was also his agent, and you decide to let something slip at a press conference and not talk to anybody about it. Like, I just was like, how is that realistic? And I was like, this is not indicative of a healthy relationship to me. And that is what was tricky, is they're trying to pass it off as, now that they've had the second chance, they're both older, they're both more mature, they both are a little bit more established and can therefore put the other person first. And yet they're still making decisions that I was just like, you need to have a discussion with your significant other because this will impact both of you. And it never happens.
For me, I felt like it was kind of a Taylor Swift, Travis Kelsey fan fiction.
Yeah.
And that was one of my other issues, is it wasn't as blatant as some of the other books that we've seen on the market that have gotten a lot of backlash. But I think there were undertones on this one. One of the things I do appreciate about the rule book is there's an author's note at the beginning that lets you know if you want to skip certain content, don't read chapter 36 or whatever it is, right? And I wish more authors would continue to do those author notes. I think they're super helpful for readers.
But I mean, all that being said, I am extremely excited for her next novel because it is part of the When in Rome series. Honestly, if you take When in Rome, it feels like a completely different person wrote them than who wrote the rest of her series. And which is so fascinating to me. But I still I like her books. I think they're cute. But if you go in expecting an Emily Henry type of book, you are not going to get that.
I think that wraps up for us. Join us next time to hear our thoughts on whatever we're reading next. If you have a request for a book for us to review, please put it in the comments.
Let us know your thoughts on Sarah Adams' books, the ones you've liked, which ones you haven't liked, and any other thoughts you have. Also, if you did read the rule book and you have a different take on it, let us know. And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.